Bob and Tom are now Antifa.
There's both fascists, right? I think there's an S in there.
Like, how much of this is just sort of like an online cosplay?
You know, I feel like there is a pretty strong element of that. The alt-right, they try and say anime and Japanese video games belong to them. That's not true. It belongs to everybody.
So the topic of this video is punching Nazis, and before I begin, let me tell you what I'm up against. I'm familiar with the people on the left who are trying to justify violence. They're a bunch of pseudo-intellectual memers. The level of groupthink with these people is astounding. They live in little social media bubbles like tanky Twitter, where they let people get away with defending North Korea and Stalin. They also often join up with the relativists and anti-white racists. This isn't me being dismissive. I'm not dismissing them. I'm about to completely demolish their position. This is just me making it clear that I'm under no illusion about who these people actually are. Of course, they're condescending as fuck to everyone, but I'm supposed to take them seriously even though it's painfully obvious that they're mostly just kids who are following a fad. Occasionally they'll step out of their echo chambers and they'll pretend to be so well-read and scholarly, and then they go back to their lairs and submerge themselves in memes and say things like "fuck all men, men are trash," which they consider to be very sophisticated thoughts. As I'll discuss later in this video, actual intellectuals on the left have had it with these fucking clowns. The first thing I'll point out is the hypocrisy of the hipster leftists I've dealt with. They're okay with punching white supremacists, but they're against punching black supremacists. They're also against punching Islamists and apologists for North Korea. This doesn't surprise me at all. I think a lot of hipster leftists think like this. They love double standards in favor of minorities. Let's think about who they want to punch. It can't just be anyone with bigoted views. That would include something like half the Muslims in the UK, because 52% of them want homosexuality to be illegal according to a survey, so they'd have to be punched too, and it'll be a cold day in hell before the regressives start punching Muslims. They're afraid to even mention the statistic I just pointed out. It can't just be actual Nazis either, though. That would narrow it down a lot, and many of the regressives wouldn't be satisfied with that. The actual group most of them want to punch is bigots who happen to be white, and of course their notion of bigot is ridiculously broad. The hipster left keeps saying that violence against neo-Nazis is necessary, but I've only seen them defend that claim with one shitty argument. They say that debate didn't stop the Nazis last time. Well, things have changed since the fucking 1930s. If you think people today are anywhere near as anti-Semitic and racist as they were in 1930s Germany, you're insane. You have to actually show that these neo-Nazis are a serious threat, because it's not like responding to speech with violence is without its downsides. The danger is obvious. If you normalize punching Nazis, what are you going to do about the hordes of regressives who have broadened the definition of Nazi to the point of absurdity? So far, we've already seen people labeled Nazis who clearly aren't, and we've seen violence committed against people who aren't a threat to anyone. It turns out that mobs of extremists aren't perfect at deciding who the bad guys are. I have yet to see anyone who claims to be in favor of punching Nazis even acknowledge this problem, much less do anything about it. We can at least be thankful that these people are almost as incompetent at violence as they are at debate. It takes about 100 of them to do the damage one normal person could do. If you've been living deep underground and require evidence of the stupid and obviously unnecessary acts of violence by these deranged leftists, I'll be posting links in the description. So if you just advocate punching actual Nazis, then you should be speaking out against some of this violence. And don't give me this bullshit about how you shouldn't criticize the left because the right is more violent. That's the fallacy of relative privation. You can condemn two things at once. But I want to talk about another argument against punching Nazis that a lot of other people have made. It doesn't work. It was tried, and it didn't stop the Nazis last time. In fact, according to rape apologist and active shooter Peter Singer, this sort of violence actually made things worse. Now I'm going to read you the last few paragraphs of his article. He says, some Antifa activists trace the origin of the movement to groups that fought against fascists in Europe in the 1920s and 1930s. In Germany, in the years before Hitler came to power, the Nazis' paramilitary stormtroopers beat up, sometimes fatally, Jews and political opponents. In self-defense, the left responded with its own militias, the Communist Party's Red Front fighters, and the Social Democrats' Iron Front. The result was an escalation of street violence and a sense among the wider public that law and order were breaking down. Many came to believe that a firm hand was required to restore order and stability. A firm hand was exactly the image that Hitler was trying to project, and as the violence worsened, the Nazi vote rose. We all know how that tragedy played out. Is it far-fetched to think that history could repeat itself in this way? To Antifa activists who see violence as the answer to the far right, it should not be. They are the ones who are drawing the historical parallels. The Times quotes an Antifa activist. If we stand back, we are allowing them to build a movement whose end goal is genocide. If that is the danger, we need to find a better way of combating it than the tactic that so plainly failed in Germany. And that's the end of Peter Singer's manifesto. Singer was of course later found dead. He committed suicide in his bunker. But it gets even better. Alt-right gamer Noam Chomsky said that Antifa is a major gift to the right. He's also repeatedly argued that if it comes down to violence, the most brutal people are going to win, and that's not the far left. Now, having seen some of the fearsome combatants on the far left, I can say, yeah, Chomsky is completely right. Hipster freaks who get no exercise don't make the best fighting force. It's impossible not to laugh at the idea that a bunch of SJWs are supposed to save us from Nazis, as if the people who get PTSD from Twitter are going to excel at hand-to-hand combat. We're talking about the people who need safe spaces and worry about manspreading. These people have never faced any real difficulty in their lives. You're going to have a lot more to worry about than microaggressions when you're getting chokeslammed by Alex Jones. The pro-Antifa people say that debate is often futile. This is true, although I'm aware that most of the people saying this aren't capable of debate to begin with. Most people are Patrick from SpongeBob. They don't know anything and they cannot be reasoned with. But we have this thing called the free marketplace of ideas. Everyone's allowed to participate, and the true ideas are supposed to win out by convincing the larger number of people. But most of the participants are Patricks. Antifa is not the solution to this problem. Antifa isn't for disempowering stupid or unreasonable people, they're for disempowering people they disagree with. They just create a worse version of the problem of Patricks, where not only are the Patricks taking up most of the space in debates, they're also allowed to attack people. There are no intellectual qualifications required to join Antifa, and they make no distinction between their rational opponents and the irrational ones. So this leads to situations like an ignorant teenage Antifa anime fan trying to beat up a well-educated, rational, and honest person on the other side. This is what Antifa stands for.